I greet you with Jesus' joy, for it is in him that I live, breathe, move, and have my very being. I am delighted that everybody decided to join Unboxed on purpose today. We are a podcast created for Favored by the Father Ministries. I am Barbara Arlene Fields Brehon, your host. Our featured guests share how they stepped out of dark places in life, or maybe they made simple pivots toward purpose to become unboxed. We discuss experiences that lead to the fulfillment of God gifted purpose. And I pray that each episode will help each listener and each viewer to access their authentic destiny. Sharing with us today is Jeffrey James Higgins of Old Town, Alexandria, Virginia. He'll be discussing writing is a calling. Hi, Jeffrey.
Hi, Barbara. Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for saying yes to the call. Jeff is a retired supervisory special agent who, yeah, I did say special agent, who
I'm
writes
special.
who writes thrillers, short stories, creative nonfiction, and essays. He has, listen to this, guys, he has wrestled a suicide bomber, fought the Taliban in combat, and chased terrorists across 5 continents. I told you he was a special agent. Jeffrey received the Attorney General's Award for exceptional heroism and the DEA Award of Valor. He's been interviewed by CNN, Fox News, the New York Times, and National Geographic. Jeffrey's a #1 Amazon best-selling author and author of 4 published thrillers. I am just excited that this man has decided that he'd spend some time on the Unboxed on Purpose stage with us today. Hello again, Jeffrey. Thanks for being here.
Hello. No, it's my pleasure. This will be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. I want you to begin our conversation telling our audience what your recollection is of our initial acquaintance. When we first met in cyberspace, what were your first impressions and what were your first thoughts about who it is that I am and what we're trying to do here?
I think you originally were at our Elaine's Literary Salon. I think that was probably the first time we met. We have a literary salon in Old Town, Alexandria, and we host authors, and I've interviewed 125 plus authors there. And it's just honestly, I just love being around authors. I love talking about writing, the craft and business, and just being around other storytellers. And I can tell your excitement in love of the same. So it's always great to find like-minded souls.
It's so fascinating when an agent of mine contacted me to be Eddie Lane's to do that thing in Alexandria last year this time. And then we connected in this virtual space to try to get some podcasting done. And in our conversation, it turns out you were telling me your background and introducing yourself. And it was like, wait a minute, is that the same? And it turned out that you were the same guy. And I had never met you face to face. So I wanted our audience to get some of those connections, because some folks do follow the podcast and what it is that we're up to.
It's a small world, right? People are connected,
Indeed.
If you talk to someone long enough, you'll find somebody you both know. Like it's inevitably, I think I'm connected to everybody within one or two levels.
I think that's fascinating. And there's something running in me right now that I want to just get out of the way because we can't go into all the details of it. But what did you feel when you were running around the globe as a special agent? Just talk about what that feels like on the inside as a man, as a person, being a special agent, doing the things that you did. Just the feelings.
I think most people who get into that line of work are trying to protect others, so I think at a very basic level, you have this need to protect the tribe, to protect people who can't protect themselves, whether it's a law enforcement officer or a special agent. And that was one of the first the first group that got to the North Tower of the World Trade Center after it came down. And I'd been doing mostly transnational criminal groups, racketeering cases and, homicide, things like that prior to that. And after that, after 9/11, I decided to just go after terrorists. So, I mean, I was really just, I'm very much driven by this internal need to try to protect our country and to go after people who are just doing the most horrific acts, you know, and throwing acid in girls' faces and murdering and raping. And, you know, like, and so I was just really driven by that. And I mean, I'd work 20-hour days all the time. You know, I'd be overseas for 10 months out of a year, you know. And so it was, I mean, it was really that. It was a sense of mission, the sense of like, if I take a break or if I don't give it my all, this, you know, it actually has real world consequences. People could die, you know, it's literally life and death stuff. So, you know, I constantly getting calls in the middle of the night where I'd have a source calling me to tell me about an attack that's about to happen and having to respond to it. And I mean, I did that for a long, long time. But so that was it. It was this idea that if, you know, just having to protect.
If we are who we are as individual people, and we hear what you're saying from the inside of that particular life and that work that you were doing, I want, as we discuss being unboxed on purpose, for people to understand that whatever it is that you're going through, there is somebody on the other side of your experience dealing with something as well. And the Lord that I serve, the God that I serve, cares about everybody. And so he wants us to be the best version of ourselves. And I so appreciate you, your work, and the service that you rendered. So we wanted to get that out of the way so that we don't have to come back to that again unless it pops up in your conversation about purpose, because that's unboxed on purpose right there, chasing folks all over the world, literally. I mean,
You know,
hallelujah.
you said something really good there, you know, but everyone's dealing with something, you
That's
know. And
right.
it's, and I think especially with like writers, you know, and people, they think that all the self-doubt that they have, or the, you know, all the things that come into trying to write and get published, but like all writers are going through that, you know. And it's the same thing for everyone. People are human and sharing a lot of the same struggles and obstacles. I think it's important sometimes just to remember that.
It is. You've titled today's show, your particular episode, "Writing is a Calling." And as a writer myself, I know that a lot of times I reflect upon experiences that go back as far as my childhood sometimes, and experience that I had that caused me to be or to think a certain way. And so as you think about your childhood and reflect as far back as your childhood and teen years, tell us about the days in the Jeffrey James Higgins life that you'd like to share that may have created a passion in you that helped you to develop into who you have become.
You know, it's a chicken or the egg thing in some ways. Obviously, you get shaped by your experiences, you
Yep.
know, and opportunities. But I also feel like being like a storyteller, I really feel that's something people have it. Like I can never remember not wanting to be a writer. You know, so, you know, my mother and father would tell me stories when I was a little kid at bedtime. I mean, I remember that and looking forward to that. They were always reading. There were always books in the house. You know, I remember reading adult books at a very young age, you know, and just trying to open up these new adventures and and learn things and, you know, escape into books. And I was an only child from the first 7 years of my life, and maybe that played into it a little bit too, you know. So there are probably a lot of different things that like drew me to writing and stories, but I always wanted to do it. And I remember my parents telling me very early on, you know, you can't make a living as an author, and they're mostly right, you know. Like it's very difficult. So I decided to go into journalism, you know, which was writing adjacent. Which, by the way, I don't know that is the best pathway for writers sometimes. Like if you want to be a writer and that's your love, but you also want to make money so you can like do things like eat and have shelter, you know, I don't know that having a job that takes a lot of creative energy is necessarily the best thing, because it's really difficult, you know, if you're writing full time for your day job to then write in the spaces in between, or early in the morning or late at night or whatever. It's hard you only have so much creative energy in a day, and you can burn through it pretty quickly.
That's some good advice from the inside of a person who's always wanted to write and has been writing for a long time. And I just want to put it back on the table that with your lifestyle, you have become a writer. You write thrillers. I write Christian books that help people with their relationship with God. You write thrillers. So we're doing what it is that we do authentically. But if you had to unbox one lesson that shaped who you are, what would that be?
You mean like in growing up, or the one thing? I mean, I would,
Wherever you want to go with it.
Yeah, I mean, for writing, it would certainly be the exposure to story. Like when I write, I feel like I'm channeling the story. Like, and I know a lot of writers, but this is who feel the same way. When I was a kid, I remember like going to bed, but having these stories inside me and wanting to write them. I mean, it was probably 8 years old, and I remember I have stories from when I was 6 and 7, like with construction paper covers that I would make, and like so I was writing as soon as I could learn to read and write, I was writing. But I remember like, going to bed and then, sneaking out of bed and turning on the light and writing in these old notebooks with a pencil. And I'd write so fast because the story was really coming through me that I'd rub my fingers raw from writing. And I
Wow.
know, I know a lot of writers that feel like that, like they can't type fast enough or write fast
Hmm.
enough to actually get it out as the story's coming to them. And it's really interesting because I interview so many writers now, and I often ask them. I ask one question that's the same for all of them. Everything else is just sort of organic. But I ask them, where does story come from? And I find it to be a really interesting question, because when you feel like you're channeling, and I'm sure you have this too, because you're nodding, right? Like when you feel like you're channeling this story, where is that coming from? Is it coming from just a bunch of your experiences in your subconscious coming together? Or is it coming from someplace else?
For me, it's coming from more than one place. It's coming from experiences. It's coming from deep within me. And I have to say, deep within me is the Lord Jesus. And therefore, He's planting in me something that He wants me to deliver to somebody else, whether it's through the spoken word, whether it's through the written word. But this interview is about you. I was about to go on and on about that. It's like, hold up. I'm on the wrong side of the screen right now.
No, but that's interesting, and the
But
sense of
that's
mission
it.
that you're describing, right? That's a lot of storytellers have that, whether it's the subject matter or if you're talking about people healing themselves or whatever, that's a mission. In the same way that when I was a special agent, I had a mission, right, to try to
Right.
protect people. You're feeling that. But then the writing itself, like I feel like there's almost an obligation. If you have this desire to be a storyteller, you have to do it. Like I feel like to like I feel like it's almost sinful. I'll use that word in a way, to have a talent or to have an ability or have this desire and then not use your gift. And like people, if you're a storyteller, you've got to tell stories.
They're intertwined. That mission and obligation are intertwined for me. And so I could use them synonymously in one sense. And I thought about, after I spoke with you and a couple of other authors recently, maybe I need to start trying to write a novel. And then the Lord said, no, you better start continue to be your authentic self and write what I tell you to write.
Well, it's interesting, right? That urge you have or that feeling you have to do a specific thing, and I think that's really important. Like I've known writers, like this is the most brutal business on earth. For people who
Yeah.
aren't writers, like it's like try to get an agent, they take 1 out of 4,000 queries. To try to get published is brutal, and so a lot of people quit, but the people who are actual storytellers always come back to it. Like I can't tell you how many authors have been like, I said, I'm done. And then like 2 months later, I'm like, hey, so what are you doing? Well, I started something new, like, cause they have to tell stories, even if they're going to have a small audience.
I have another book in my bosom. I have another book in my belly. And it doesn't matter who gets it, who reads it. I've just got to get it out. And yeah, I've got a few in there that I'm doing just like that. So let's talk about purpose a little bit more, because that's what we're talking about: missions and obligations. That's all that is. What's one thing bringing you joy as you think about what it is that you do? Let's get into the person that you are, which we already are talking about. But something joyful, personal testimony is something that connects you with growing and being unboxed in particular.
Well, I get a lot of joy from my amazing wife, and my family and friends. But when we're talking about like writing, the actual writing, like telling the stories, it's hard, and you have to, it really is difficult. But I enjoy telling the story. I love it when I have a new idea. I love it when I'm outlining something and bringing ideas together and creating characters. Like the actual act of writing to me is a lot of fun. And I interview authors, which I find a lot of joy from as well.
Right.
Talking to people who are passionate about what they do is really infectious. And I enjoy that. And my wife and I have this restaurant and literary salon, so I spend a lot of time there. But my favorite part of the day is either interviewing an author or writing when I get there very early in the morning. That I feel like like you said, you have this thing inside you, it's coming out of me, right? Like that is the time when I'm most happy, for sure. And it is a sense of purpose. Like it's a compulsion to tell story. And I've talked to a lot of writers who feel like that. Like I'll get new new writers who come in and they'll talk about, oh, I want to do this and I want to write a book and I want to do it. And it's great. And I encourage them. I tell them a little bit about the business, but a lot of them aren't writing. And it's like, it's always, they'll write when, and when these things line up. And that, to me, that's someone who really it doesn't have this compulsion. Like if you're a writer, write, and as soon as you're a writer, don't call yourself an aspiring writer. You don't have to be published to be a writer. You know what I mean? Just write, and then you're a writer. Like, start today. If you have that book or that idea inside you, just start writing it.
I was speaking recently at a convention with a gentleman who is a professor, and he has published his first book, and he was sitting at a vendor table doing the thing, and we had this conversation about what was next and that sort of thing. And he said, what you just did, I'm going to do my next one when, and I'm like, okay, let me just challenge you right now. Don't wait until all those things happen. I challenge you to go ahead and get started with that now, because there are experiences that you're having right now that are in you right now that you need to put on paper, or right now. You need to get it down. And with all of the devices that we have now, like you said, you're trying to write it, you're trying to type it, you can't get it all in. But then there's this button that you can speak it and transcribe it and all that. And I just absolutely love being able to do that, because I can talk my ideas out and not lose them. So there are no excuses. If a person is a writer, they're a writer. If they're not, they're not. If you're forcing it, it's not going to come out right. You'll never be satisfied anyway.
You just gave that guy great advice. And it's funny that you talk about like dictation. I just dictated I'm editing right now, but I just dictated the first draft of a novel. Every single word in it was dictated as an experiment, because I'd use it as a tool. And I wanted to see what would it be like to do the whole thing. And it's difficult, but I really cracked it when you can. I use my phone and the Word app on my phone,
Right.
and when I just walk outside for 15 minutes by myself, if you're in motion, you actually think better. Like, you get a 10-point IQ bump when you're in motion, but just walking away and focusing, I'm able to get into flow almost immediately. Whereas if I'm sitting at my computer, it takes a while sometimes, if at all, but dictating is very, very efficient. It just takes a while to not see the words in front of you when you're writing. And it's a different way your brain processes it. So you have to be able to, like, I'd look at a scene, know what's going to happen roughly in that scene, and then just start dictating. And I find that the language is better, right? The dialogue is certainly more natural because you're speaking it. So it comes out the right way.
I'm loving this conversation in terms of the dynamics of being unboxed on purpose, and is strategically pointing for writers that want to know more about it from the inside of it, from people who have completely different walks of life, but yet we've got that commonality about words, how they work, what they do, and how they make you feel. And so when we're talking about those kinds of things, we're talking about people that we've poured into, and how we're doing what we're doing as published writers. But when you think about people that poured into you, can you think of a situation that you want to share with us where somebody poured something into your life that spoke into how your journey was actually better as a writer, as an author, because of what they said that you hadn't even thought about until they said it, maybe?
I mean, that's a really good question. And I would say it's hard to answer just because there's so many people, right? Like, especially when I first started, I probably read 30 books on craft and business, because everyone has this idea of a writer, right? And we all have this kind of like 1965 image of a writer and the book parties and like sitting there in isolation. But it doesn't really work like that anymore. And so, like, going to conferences, having beta readers, having a critique group, listening to people who are experts. Like, I just got back from Thriller Fest a couple of weeks ago. And it's, the top writers in the world are there, and they do panels, and they're telling you, with their tricks to both process and publishing and how to deal with agents. And like, there's so much to it, right? Craft and business of writing is constantly changing. And so there's just so many people. Like, I can't tell you how many. Like, I'd sit through like a 45-minute talk by an author, and I'd know a lot of it or whatever. And then they say this one thing, and sometimes they would just say it in a different way. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, this one was from a book. It's How to Save the Cat Writes a Novel by Jessica Brody. That's the book. And she just described wants versus needs of a character. right? And for some reason that just clicked in my head, because people talk about the internal arc and the external arc and what they're, what the plot, what the character is seeking throughout the book, and then internally how the characters have to change. But that wants versus needs, they want this and they think they want that, but what they really need is something different. They have to change inside, something that's either a misbelief that they have, or it's a character flaw or something that they have to overcome. But then those two, the external and internal, have to come together. So the change inside helps them fix whatever they were trying to seek, or the change, what they seek, helps them change inside. But they have to work together. But it was just the way she phrased that, right? Wants versus needs. And I clicked, because I'd heard people talk about this so much, and now other people will hear it a different way and it'll work for them. And sometimes I'll listen to other people. Now I'll listen to somebody talking about writing and I'll be like, yeah, I'm not really getting what they're saying. You know what I mean? And so I think it helps to just listen, read about it, talk to people, talk to authors, and especially people who are successful. Like, I want to hear what they're doing that worked for them, because we're all different. I can tell you dictation works for me. It might not work for somebody else. I'd say give it a chance, give it a few weeks, to really try to figure it out. But if it doesn't work for you, don't do it. Like, I write in the morning. Some people write at night. I can write 15-minute blocks if I have them during the day. A lot of people need a set 3 or 4 or 5 hours in a row to really get their heads into it. Whatever, everybody's different. But the one thing we all have in common as like published authors is we write, right? Like, so I write every day, and you don't have to write every day, but you mostly have to write every day, and so there's a million excuses, and I've heard all of them, but all the collateral stuff you do around writing is a way just not to be writing. You really just have to write.
I'm just considering all of it writing. I'm a retired reading specialist as well. And so teaching communication skills and all the things that go with all of that at all the different age levels, grade levels, and that sort of thing. Working with those words is just fascinating. And whether you are representing the words or whether you're actually reading the words out loud or orally speaking the words, is still participating in that craft of writing.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do write every day. I love the way you say that. And as you spoke about that individual who, that one little nugget about needs and wants and the internal, external, and all those things. I mean, you're talking to a theologian here, because I am still a preacher. I'm still a pastor person. And I hear that theologically speaking, because that's what we have as individual people: problems, struggles. And it's that internal conflict that we have, that we process every day, whether we're going to do this or whether we're going to do that, because those kinds of things are the things that writing is all about. Whether you're writing fiction, nonfiction, whether you're in one particular genre or another, it really doesn't matter. If you have that calling on your life to be a writer, it's going to come out.
It's interesting that you say the parallels with like the theological, right? Because as a fiction writer, I'm writing characters, so I'm writing humans, and there's these universal things that all humans deal with, and people have different struggles and they have different whatever, but we're all dealing with something. And so when you're creating a character, they're flawed, right? And they have but they have agency, and they can change themselves, and they can change externally, and they can better their lives. And so it really is a mirror of the nonfiction, right? With people, because I'm just doing it with a fictional character, which in some ways allows people to see themselves in it in a different way without putting up all the walls, right? Because it's fictional. So they let themselves go and immerse themselves in the mind of that protagonist.
That's just this is all just wonderful stuff. Because so here I am going on another tangent, and I'm going to underline it with the word therapeutic. This whole conversation is medicinal and spiritually therapeutic as well, because in my days of being very, very sick and having a dreaded disease and having to go through this, that, and the other, and not being able to get rid of the disease in a certain way, I have to live with this. I've got to learn to live with this. That's a character in your story, right? Just saying, but this is my real life in my nonfiction world. But in your thriller world, I gave it a name.
Right.
And so in my reading teacher mind, that I wasn't even a reading teacher at the time, but in my mind that loves working with characters and words and those kinds of things, I gave the illness a name, and I talk to it every day. They're like, well, you're going to be there. You're going to be my constant companion. I might as well have conversations with you and learn to live with this thing. And we're going to get on with this thing called life. I'm not going to wallow in it. And so those are kinds of things as well. When you're in a dark space with your writing and you can't seem to climb out of that hole, what do you do to get yourself into back into that writing zone? You actually think about, for me, I think about my life. I think about what I'm doing, and I think about what I'm thinking about. And then I
That's good
journal
stuff.
it, and I
That's
journal
good stuff.
it, and I write about that. You go ahead and take that one off and go ahead and talk about that a little bit.
No, I mean your idea of not wallowing in something, right? Like in being proactive and saying like, I have to deal with this. So how am I going to deal with it? And then, I mean, the parallels to writing and the protagonist journey. I mean, it's just writing is just about human beings. But that's the thing, right? You identify the problem, you realize you have to deal with it, and then you address it every day. You know what I mean? And you find a way to overcome or to live with it, or to whatever it is. You find a way to move forward. And I think that's great. And that by the way is like a character arc, right? Like, so that's
Exactly.
problem, conflict, resolution, and so you made it to the third act of this story where you're overcoming this and finding a way to fight through whatever issues you have. And that really is at the heart of story, and story is at the heart of human experience.
Amen. 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 We're saying what we're saying and resonating with each other so well. And I just pray that this episode is helping people with life, because that's really what Unboxed on Purpose is all about. You have any other nuggets you want to drop out in particular with being and becoming Unboxed on Purpose?
I would just say that everything that's preventing people from, either addressing an issue or, like, say, writing, know that everyone else is going through that. There's these universal themes in the human experience, and everyone else is going through that as well. So just, decide what you want to do, decide what you want your life to look like, whether it's the writing life or outside of writing, and then set your goals and then achieve them, and they'll be tough and people go through it, but just keep fighting through it, because there's you will get to the end. Just don't give up. Like, I can say that's when I talk to so many young writers. One of the things I see for people who don't get published is they'll get to like the middle of their book, and it is difficult. They call it the muddy middle, right? Like, they get to this middle part and then they give up, and it's like, and then they have this new idea, this shiny new thing, and they go, oh, let me do that. And it's this inability to just get to the end. If you want to write, whether it's short stories or poetry or whatever, finish the project. You can always fix it. And then if in the end, if it's not good enough, fine, because you learned, right? Malcolm Gladwell talks about that 10,000 hours to mastery, and it's like 1,000,000 words, like you have to write a lot, and then you just get better. So even if you write something and it's not great, you've learned so much from it. And many authors have books in drawers that will never see the light of day, but that was how they learned to write. So just get to the end, finish it, and now you know what it's like. Now you know what the whole process is like. There is an experience to finishing something that you can't have if you keep stopping in the middle. And I know people who have 8 books that are half finished, and that's not the way to go. Finish the book, even if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Figure out why, use beta readers, and then start a new project. But just write.
That's great stuff right there. You had me thinking about my days when I first started in seminary and all that, and talking about all kinds of theology, different types and whatnot. And I classified myself as a process theologian, because how things work are just always fascinating for me. And actually, in terms of the writing process that we're talking about today, the way that I actually seem to always write stuff, even as far back as when I was in high school writing term papers, I always wrote. But my introduction, I'd always write last. Whatever came up with chapter 1, or whatever came up with the first introductory thesis, or what have you, whatever is the beginning of that particular type of writing, I could come up with that last. And even now, when I write text messages, and when I write, when I'm writing an email or anything, I write, whatever it is. And generally, whatever is the last thing that I wrote is what I clip and put at the beginning of it and say, I should have started with this.
There's 2 really good things there. One is by writing, you figured out what it was you wanted to do, right? Like, because you figure out what the theme is, you figure out what the point is, and then two, editing. You're like, you go
Yep.
through and you realize this is a way to do it. Like, so many writers start in the wrong place when they start a book, but that's okay. Just write the book, and then you can go back. A lot of times, like, I would say one of the most common things I do with new writers is I'll cut the first chapter or two because they're doing backstory and they're slowly. You want to. Somebody said, I don't remember who it was, but you want to start as late as possible and then get out as soon as you can, right? Like, you want the book, honor your reader's time. And so that's what you're doing there. You're figuring the process is when you're writing, you're playing with the ideas on the page,
That's
and then
right.
you're figuring out what it actually is. You cut to the heart of it. Then you feel like, how am I going to grab their attention at the beginning? And that's great. I mean, that's exactly how you should be doing it.
I hope that what we're talking about today is helping somebody. You are an author, but what we have not done is told people what you have written. And I want you to share the books that you have written, the thrillers, as well as how people can get their hands on them.
Oh, thank you. So yeah, I just came out with I write thriller, mystery, suspense. They're all some subgenre of mystery. My first book, Furious, Sailing into Terror, psychological suspense. Then I wrote Unseen, which is a crime thriller. Then I wrote The Forever Game, which is a techno thriller. And book one of this new at least 4-book series with a new publisher just came out. It's The Havana Syndrome, and it's a Nathan Burke series. And so this is an international espionage series. And book two, The Corazon Retribution, comes out in September, and The China Gambit comes out in December. And I'm working on book 4 now, which they're doing this rapid release, which will come out in March of 2026. If people are interested, they can find me, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, and my website is jeffreyjameshiggins.com, JEFFREY. And that's really the best place for people to find me.
That's all good stuff right there as well. I definitely put you backstage because I know I'm going to superimpose your book covers there so that they can see what they're looking for and know when they get it. I'm like, yeah, I got the right one. And so you be sure you share with me your book covers so that I can superimpose those on our screen. Is there anything else you want to dump out there for us as we get ready to conclude this episode?
If you're a writer, write. just start writing. It doesn't matter of how bad it is, because no one's going to see it until it's good enough to be published. Just hang in there and keep writing, and try to get some outside input. Find some people that you trust to read your work, and you will get better. It just takes time.
That is so profound. If you're a writer, write. There you go. We spent 30 minutes talking about that, right? Right. And it summed it up in a few words, just like that. Thank you so much for sharing your precious time with us. And perhaps I'll see you again at Elaine's in Alexandria, Old Town Alexandria, Virginia. Beautiful, quaint restaurant there. It's Mediterranean cuisine, and it's absolutely delicious. So y'all show up in Alexandria as well and find Elaine's restaurant with Mediterranean cuisine. He didn't know I was going to give a push for his wife's restaurant.
I love it. It's a wonderful place. She's just done a great job with it.
I just love it. I'll be back there whenever I'm in Alexandria again. And so now we turn to our listening audience, and thank you so much for joining us. We do post our episodes on Thursdays for Unboxed on Purpose. Every Thursday, we shoot it out to our YouTube channel, Facebook page, as well as LinkedIn and most podcast platforms. I would like you to know that I believe Unboxed on Purpose is all about our logo. As we evolve, we are like butterflies floating out of a box that's maybe dark or confining, and allowing the Spirit of God to advance us to high, lofty, immeasurable levels as far as we dare to dream and think we can go. Fulfill your purpose. Grow your intimacy with the Lord. And as you grow in grace, remain favored by the Father. God bless you, and we'll see you next week.